All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Sarek. I'm the Deputy Director for the Indiana Alcohol and Tobacco Commission. I am here with Lieutenant Brian Stewart of the Indiana Excise Police. Lieutenant Stewart oversees our Trade Practices Division, and he is also the agency's resident encyclopedia of state alcohol laws. In this webinar, we will introduce the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission and review the basic rules and requirements governing the purchase, sale, and distribution of alcoholic beverages in the state of Indiana. Our goal is to provide an overview of what all new alcohol permittees should know when operating in the state. In this presentation, we will discuss the following topics. I will start with a brief overview of the ATC's mission, vision, and goals. I will then hand it over to Lieutenant Stewart to discuss floor plans, purchasing alcohol products, employee and training records, food sales requirements, managers and manager questionnaires, minors and checking IDs, the public smoking ban, and then finally, final tips and takeaways. Under the 21st Amendment, which repealed prohibition, the regulation of the sale, possession, and distribution of alcohol is left primarily to the states. The Alcohol and Tobacco Commission was created in 1933 by the Indiana General Assembly to implement state law governing alcohol, which is engrossed in Title 7.1 of the Indiana Code and Title 905 of the Indiana Administrative Code. The general purposes of Title 7.1 of the Indiana Code are to protect the economic welfare, health, peace, and morals of the people of the state, to regulate and limit the manufacture, sale, possession, and use of alcohol and alcoholic beverages, to regulate the sale, possession, and distribution of tobacco products, and to provide for the raising of revenue. The revenue raised by the Indiana Alcohol Tobacco Commission is primarily raised through permit fees, and these fees are distributed between local governments where the retail and dealer permits are located, the Indiana Alcohol Tobacco Commission, and the Indiana General Fund. The Alcohol and Tobacco Commission is primarily responsible for issuing alcohol permits, while the Indiana State Excise Police acts as the law enforcement arm of the ATC. The ATC prosecutor prosecutes all violations of alcoholic beverage laws, rules, and regulations. The ATC's mission is to regulate the manufacture, distribution, and sale of alcohol and tobacco in Indiana through permitting, education, and enforcement. And the agency's vision is to foster a safe and healthy marketplace for alcohol and tobacco that meets the needs of permittees and the communities they serve. With regard to this latter point, it is also incumbent upon the permittees to ensure that they are operating in a manner that is safe and in a manner that adds to the prosperity, the happiness, and the standard of living for the community in which they operate. It is a very important component of our duty to review the qualifications of permit holders to ensure that their business practices and your business practices are in meeting with these standards and expectations. As a regulatory agency, the ATC expects that all permit holders comply with Title 7.1 of the Indiana Code and Title 905 of the Indiana Administrative Code. And we also expect that our permit holders exercise responsible business and trade practices pertaining to these laws. With that, I am going to hand it over to Lieutenant Stewart to talk a little bit more about what he does, and then discuss floor plan approvals.
Okay, so before we dive into floor plan approvals, I just want to give a little bit background specifically about the state excise police, just in case you're not familiar with the agency. We are fully sworn police officers who have a focus on alcohol and tobacco laws. So we handle criminal enforcement, which goes through local prosecutors' offices. We also handle administrative enforcement of the rules and regulations for the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission that go through the ATC prosecutor's office. To do that, we have 82 officers who work out of 6 district offices across the state. as well as a general headquarters office. So we are primarily a plainclothes, unmarked car agency. So if officers stop by your business on a Friday or Saturday night to do a permit visit, they're more than likely going to be in plain clothes. But we do obviously have credentials consisting of a badge and photo ID that you or your employees can request to see, and we will identify ourselves prior to uh, to engaging in the purpose of the visit. So just to give you a little bit of background on the agency, of those 82 officers, I actually supervise 9 of those officers whose primary duties involve local boards. So if you remember back to the local board process, you've probably dealt with one of those officers. So prior to the commission releasing any permit and making it active, there's a requirement that a final inspection be conducted. A couple of things we're looking for as far as final inspections. We're looking to make sure that the permit is in the proper location. It's not within 200 feet of a church or school. The address matches up. And then we're also looking at the physical layout of the location. So as a general rule, anytime you put in a wall, knock down a wall, add a service area, such as a new bar, you want to make sure that you amend the floor plan that we have on file. And the easiest way to get that accomplished is if you see the link on the slide, that will take you to a list of local board officers, and you can find the officer who's assigned to your county. So you can just reach out to them directly, and there's no cost associated with it. So I always recommend that if there's any question whether or not you need to amend the floor plan, reach out to your local board officer and make sure that they're aware of it. Maybe it's something that doesn't need to be added. Maybe it does. But some of the issues we see with floor plans have to do with unapproved outbuildings used for storage of alcohol. Places put patios on without getting prior approval. So anytime you expand your footprint, again, make sure you amend your floor plan and have everything up to date. And one of the biggest issues we see with new permits starting out of the gate is there's a requirement that you purchase all of your alcohol as a retailer. All of your alcohol has to come from a licensed wholesaler. Indiana, like every other state, follows the 3-tier model that was put in place after Prohibition. So you start with manufacturers. The manufacturers sell to the wholesalers. Wholesalers sell to the retailers. What retailers are prohibited from doing is purchasing alcoholic beverages from fellow retailers. So what happens is that you run out of something, your wholesaler can't deliver for another week or so. You are actually prohibited from going to another retailer such as Sam's Club or Costco or a packaged liquor store to purchase alcohol. It's got to come from a wholesaler. So one exception to that is that certain craft manufacturers are also going to have the ability to sell directly to retailers. So small brewers, some farm wineries, some artisan distillers will have the ability to self-distribute. If you need to locate a wholesaler, you can actually follow the link on the slide. That'll get you to a search page where you can put in criteria to look for alcoholic beverage wholesalers. Those are broken up into beer, wine, liquor, and micro wine. But you can get a list of all the active alcohol wholesalers, and you can break that down into geographic areas. So if you're looking for a wholesaler in the Fort Wayne area, you'll be able to narrow that down. One thing to remember also is that the general rule is there's no carry-on or carry in of alcoholic beverages. So you're not allowed to have a customer bring in their own bottle and charge a corking fee or anything like that. So there is an exception for DORA areas, but that's a little uh, we'll skip that for now. But for the
That's
general,
for a future presentation.
yeah, general rule is alcoholic beverages can't be carried in. So. Okay, when it comes to purchasing requirements for beer, beer is cash on delivery, so it's COD only. If you order beer, you'll be paying cash or a cash equivalent. That could be an electronic funds transfer, but you're paying for it upon delivery. Wine and liquor are a little bit different. Wine and liquor can extend credit terms for up to 15 days. If the invoice is not paid within that initial 15 days, then a wholesaler can deliver COD for wine and liquor for an additional 15 days. At the end of that second 15-day period, if the invoice still remains unpaid, then the business is subject to being put on no ship, which means that no wholesaler can sell them alcoholic beverages until the invoices is satisfied. Some other common violations we see when it comes to purchasing alcohol, in addition to the retail-to-retail sales, has to do with the refilling of bottles and containers. So state statutes prohibit a permittee from refilling a bottle or container of any type. So even if it is the same brand, say you have one 750 milliliter bottle of Jack Daniels that's just got a little bit remaining, and you've got another bottle that's half full, same product, Jack Daniels. You are not allowed to combine those two. So just keep that in mind. There's no refilling, even if it's the same product. As far as record keeping, probably the best practice, if you can keep your invoices from wholesalers for a period of 2 years, it's always helpful. Makes things go quicker if you have those records available at your premises. Now, sometimes if you're dealing with an accountant and things, they may not be on premise, but if those are available, it makes everything go smoother in the event that an officer ever asks or requests to see those invoices. Retail sampling might be an issue that comes with record keeping. Manufacturers and wholesalers are allowed to provide samples to retailers if it's a brand that has not been purchased by the retailer in the previous year. A manufacturer or wholesaler can give up to 3 gallons of beer, 375 milliliters of liquor, or 3 liters of wine. So that's an instance where you haven't purchased those. They provide those to you as a retailer as a sample. But in the event that they do that, there is a requirement that they are properly invoiced, and that invoice clearly shows that they are samples. So the general overview is you want to have documentation for any alcohol that you have on your premises. So if we see a bottle of a particular brand on your back shelf and we ask to see documentation, say, okay, here's where we got that.
Lieutenant, can the samples be sold?
No, samples cannot be sold. They're for use, for the retailer to taste, kind of get an idea of the product. Now, there's also what's referred to as consumer sampling, which they can provide up to 2.25 liters of liquor and up to, I believe it's 9 liters of wine to be used for consumer sampling, where those samples are given to customers. But again, you can't charge for those. they have to be properly invoiced, showing that they are samples.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to employee permits. These are commonly referred to as bartender permits, but actually, um, they are technically employee permits, and those employee permits are required for anybody who's working as a server, a bartender, um, waiter, waitress, manager in a restaurant, or an employee in a packaged liquor store. So it covers all of those. Um, so if you have somebody who just starts right away, they can work up to 90 days on a money order receipt. So the employee permit application comes in two forms now. There's a paper form and there is an online form. So if somebody fills out either the paper form or submits the electronic form, they get um, proof of payment. So either a money order receipt or an online receipt if they do it digitally. They have proof of payment. They can begin that day. They can work up to 90 days on that receipt. So that's enough time for the application to be processed and for them to get the application back. At the end of that 90 days, they need to have their actual paper permit. As a permit holder, if you have employees who are bartenders, waitresses, or package store clerks, you have to maintain permit records um, for each of those licensed employees. Additionally, the employees should carry their employee permit with them while they're working. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean on their person, but somewhere where they can get it. If it's a female employee and they have a purse, or if they have a locker, somewhere where they can get to it quickly and without too much disruption. Um, The employees of retail permit holders and package store permit holders have to complete a certified training course. They have to do that if they are 21 or older within 120 days of their permit being issued. For restricted type employee permits, those 18, 19, and 20-year-olds who can work as restricted employees in restaurants, which allows them to basically take orders and serve alcoholic beverage in family room areas. If they're 18, 19, or 20, they have to complete the employee training prior to getting their initial permit. And again, copies of the certificates have to be maintained. The best practice is to just make a physical photocopy or digital scan and keep those in a file. But at a minimum, the statute requires that you have the name, address, permit number, expiration date, and copies of any training records. So if an officer comes in on Saturday evening and asks to see your employee records, if you can pull that folder out, that's going to make everybody's life easier and we'll be in and out that much quicker. For retailers at on-premise consumption type locations, servers have to be at least 18 years old and have that restricted servers permit. They have to be supervised by somebody at least 21 who has also successfully completed the server training. Anyone who acts as a bartender, anyone who pours drinks, prepares drinks, is doing those functions of a bartender has to be at least 21. Packaged liquor store clerks and employees have to be 21. Pharmacy and grocery store permittees, they can have 18-year-olds ring up the sale of alcoholic beverages as long as they were supervised by someone who's at least 21. That supervisor has to be located somewhere on the premises. They don't need to be looking over the youth's shoulder, but they have to be there and they're responsible for them. Okay, another big issue we see with new permit holders is sometimes the applicants don't understand the food requirements that come with their particular type of permit. So a lot of the alcoholic beverage laws came into play, immediately following prohibition. So, they're 80, close to 90 years old. And coming out of prohibition, Indiana made a decision that we're not going to have bars in Indiana. We're going to have restaurants who are licensed to serve alcohol. So with that thinking in mind, there, there is a character of the business. There's a requirement to be considered a restaurant that you have accommodations for at least 25 individuals. And that you have minimum food service for at least 25 people. And that food service has to consist of hot sandwiches, hot soup, coffee, milk, and soft drinks. The operative words here being hot sandwiches and hot soup. You do have to, at a minimum, have a microwave, have a hot plate, have a coffee machine, some way of producing hot sandwiches, hot soup, and coffee, as well as the milk and soft drinks. This also entails having health department approval. So if the health department steps in and says, well, hey, wait a second, this location isn't authorized to serve food, that's going to impact your retail restaurant permit if that's what you're operating on. There are certain types, most prominently type 209 permits that have minimum food sales requirements. A type 209 permit is a beer, wine, and liquor retail restaurant permit in an unincorporated area. Unlike, say, a 210, which is a beer, wine, and liquor restaurant in an incorporated area, type 209s are not on quota. So what the legislature did for 209s, instead of putting them on quota, is that anybody who meets the minimum food sales requirement can qualify. That minimum food sales requirements include at least 200,000 in gross food in the first 2 years of operation, and then 100,000 each year thereafter. So they give you a little bit of time in that first 2 years to build up steam and eventually get to 100,000 in gross each year thereafter. Another big food sales requirement has to do with limited separation. Limited separation came about in around 95 or so. Prior to that, you had to have a full, complete separation between any bar area and family room. With limited separation, you can have something that reasonably deters free entrance and exit without the requirement for of doors. So you can have a half wall, you have a partial wall, fence, just anything that's going to break up the bar room from the family room. Now, to qualify for limited separation, an establishment has to do at least 200,000 in food alone per year, or they can do 60% of their total gross in the sale of food. So if you meet either one of those requirements, then you can qualify for limited separation. There isn't a third way. There's an exception for retail restaurants operated by craft manufacturers. They still have the limited separation requirement. They have to have that physical separation, but because that permit is held by a craft manufacturer, they are exempt from meeting the 200,000 or the 60%. So with the recent change in minor loitering, minors can be in the bar room under certain circumstances now. So if you have an establishment that's all bar room, or you have an establishment that has some family dining and a bar room, minors can be in that bar room if they are with a parent, legal guardian, or family member. They're there for the purpose of consuming food, and they are seated at a table and not the bar. So the key thing is it has to be family member. So my wife and I and my 16-year-old son, we could go into an area that's bar room. My son could sit there at a table that's not at the bar, consume food. What we couldn't do was bring along two of my friends or two of my son's buddies, because then they're not family members. So keep that in mind. These are in addition to the the limited separation requirements.
So in the case of bringing your son's buddies, those buddies' parents would also have to be with you in effect to be singing the bar.
Right. There would have to
Okay.
be a adult family member attached to them.
Okay.
So
Very good.
you can't bring in the girls softball team where it's just a coach and 9 players.
Sure.
So yeah, keep that in mind. Okay, there are situations where, as a permit holder, you can uh, basically turn operations over to a manager. You can have someone manage the operations for you. Just some things you want to keep in mind. Managers have to be disclosed. They have to be listed on a manager's questionnaire form, which you can download from the ATC website. But that questionnaire has to be signed off on by the permit holder. Um, Managers have to meet all of the same qualifications as the permit holder. And they have to hold, in most cases, an employee permit issued by the ATC. What you can't do, what you want to avoid is you can't just temporarily turn operations over to, say, a promoter. If you're selling your business on contract, or you live in another part of the state, and you've got an employee who handles all of the day-to-day business operations for you, that's a legitimate use of a manager's questionnaire. But to just rent your place out for a night to allow a promoter to come in, have a concert, is not going to be allowed, and generally causes a lot of problems. Okay, back in 2012, Indiana um, implemented the state smoke-free air law. So I think after a lot of initial angst and turmoil, things have kind of settled down, and I think we've settled into everybody kind of knows what to expect. But just a few things to keep in mind when it comes to the state smoke-free air law. Um, it's a general prohibition against smoking in public places, places of employment, and vehicles owned, leased, or operated by the state. Um, you got to be at least 8 feet from a public entrance to a public place or a place of employment. This comes into play a lot with locations that have patios. If you have an outdoor patio, people can smoke outside on that patio, but they do need to be at least 8 feet from the public, or from the entrance to the patio, um, the entrance that leads back into the building. And that 8 feet also includes um, ashtrays, the smoking posts, those kinds of things. You want to make sure that those are at least 8 feet away. So the state smoke-free air law can be enforced by a number of different agencies: Department of Health, the local health department, um, Department of Homeland Security, or any law enforcement officer of the state. So there is a series of exceptions listed in Indiana Code 7.1512.5. So if you think you meet any of those listed exceptions, we have a smoking ban exception form. You can download that form from the commission website, and that gets signed off on if you meet all the requirements. And basically, if you allow anyone under the age of 21 on your premises, it's typically going to knock you out of any smoking ban exception.
And would that include the patio? If you have a patio, does it have to be restricted to age to 21 or over to have smoking allowed?
No,
Okay,
so yeah, the patios, and as long as I'll put a caveat on, as long as the
sure.
patio is truly outdoors. Um,
Okay,
if it's got a roof and, then it becomes a more of a case by case thing. It's like, okay, is this patio or is this more of an extension? But true
okay.
patio, open to the air, um, as long as they're 8 feet from the door, then you can have smoking.
And would
For
the patio question be a good one to ask the your local excise officer for some guidance on, or should they reach out to you or somebody on your team?
Yeah, that's probably what we do the most of during the spring when everybody's getting ramped up. And again, I always recommend that people take advantage of it because it is free. And before you spend any time or money or effort, you can have what we call an initial inspection that shows that, okay, if we do it this way, then we're going to be okay. So it can save you some headache, and you've got something in
Definitely.
hand showing, okay, this is how we need to do it. There are some signage requirements for all businesses. You need to post a conspicuous sign that says smoking prohibited by law, if there's not an exception in place at each entrance to the premises. Um, if someone does choose to light up, you need to ask them to refrain from smoking. Um, if they continue, ask them to leave. Now, obviously, if they become combative or argumentative, um, nobody expects you to go hands on with anybody. So, that's when you can reach out to law enforcement, say, hey, we got a guy here. We asked him to leave. He's refusing to stop smoking. And at that point, law enforcement can deal with that issue. You've done all that's expected of you. Um, you need to post signs at each entrance that read state law prohibits smoking within 8 feet and remove all ashtrays and smoking paraphernalia. Um, if you need the signs, you can find printable copies on the commission's website. You can also go to breatheindiana.com and you can order. I'm assuming they still have stock, but they have window clings and some more professional looking posters. You can request copies of those for free from breatheindiana.com. And just to close out my part of it, minors and IDs. Obviously, preventing sale to minors is a big focus of the department. You start with a general rule that minors are not allowed in any tavern, bar, or other place where alcohol is sold. But then you find the 32 exceptions in Indiana Code 7.15711. So there are quite a few exceptions, but again, that general rule is they're not going to be allowed in bar rooms, especially, or packaged liquor stores. The most common exceptions of those found in 5711 are family dining areas that have that limited separation. Again, minors in the company of a parent, legal guardian, or family member who's 21, who's there for the purpose of consuming food, and they're seated at a table that is not a bar. Minors are permitted in drugstores and grocery stores. Those are exceptions written into 7.15711. They are prohibited from package stores, so 21 and over. Drugstores and grocery stores, packaged liquor stores, places that sell for carry out are required to check the ID of anyone who reasonably appears under the age of 40. So if they appear to be, you know, 30, they should be asked for ID. And alcohol sales obviously are prohibited to anyone who's under the age of 21. So just to hit on a few things as far as driver's licenses. Indiana, a few years ago went to horizontal versus vertical. Um, if you see the vertical type license that you see on the right, that means the person was under 21 when the license was issued. Um, if it's horizontal, they were over 21. Um, in order to protect yourself and for your employees to protect themselves, there is a statutory um, defense to the charge of sale of alcohol to a minor if the employee checks what's called a primary form of identification, and it's a good faith effort to check that primary form. So primary identification is basically any government issued photo ID that has the person's birth date, physical description. Um, so that can be driver's licenses, state issued ID cards. Some states, uh, concealed carry permits. If it's a government issued, it's got a photo ID, physical description, and date of birth. It's going to help establish that defense in that you check the primary form of ID. Now, in some college towns, you might want to even ask for a secondary piece of identification. Secondary identification being, documents that have the individual's name on it. So it could be a credit card, it could be a library card. Obviously, the more value that's attached to that card, the better it's going to be. Um, but you need to make sure that a primary form of ID is checked and it's checked in good faith. Probably the best thing your employees can do is actually get the ID in their hand to feel if there's erasures and different things. So they get it out from behind plastic and they have it in their hand. Sometimes you can just feel differences. Um, this being the digital age, some IDs are very, very good. These mail order, internationally produced IDs. So if you check it in good faith, it goes a long way towards establishing a legal defense. One thing I do want to mention, if you choose to use a door checker method, if you have a door guy, um, just remember that system's only as good as its weakest link. So if your door guy steps away to go to the restroom, or we've had cases where, okay, somebody's slipping him, a 20, and okay, if the door guy messes up and lets a minor through, um, and your bartender serves that person thinking, oh, they're in here, they must be okay. They got a wristband, all of that. If it turns out the door guy never checked an ID, that's going to put your bartender on the hook because they're the ones that actually serve it. So just keep that in mind if you choose to use a door checker method. So,
Great.
and
Go ahead, Lieutenant Stewart.
oh, I'm just going to say with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Chris and let him finish out.
All right. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Stewart. And if you didn't believe that he is an encyclopedia of Title 7.1 before, now you know it's true. There are maybe one other person that can ad lib that many slides about 7.1 and 905, and it's my boss, Jessica, the chair. So just some real quick final tips and takeaways. As we have outlined here, holding an alcoholic beverage permit is a privilege. You need to comply with all of the governing laws in order to keep that privilege and continue to be able to sell alcoholic beverages in the state of Indiana. You need to comply with all of Title 7.1. You need to comply with all of Title 905 of the Administrative Code, as well as any other laws, rules, or regulations that are enforced by the Alcohol and Tobacco Commission or the Indiana State Excise Police. Failure to comply with these rules and requirements may result in a warning, violation, fines, or civil penalties, and ultimately can lead to suspension or revocation of a permit. Obviously, we want to do everything we can to educate and to work with our permit holders to set up you to succeed. But it's a two-way street, and obviously it is incumbent on you all to make the effort to comply and to when you have a question, reach out. Obviously, we have a lot of great officers here that are ready to help, and some good lawyers here as well, that can answer questions. Can't give you legal advice, but we can always help you understand what the law says, so that you can do things the right way. And along those lines, if you need to reach out, you can find our contact information on this website here. You'll find Lieutenant Stewart's as well as myself and the rest of the operations team's contact information here. Our general contact line can be found down here at the bottom. And then our address is up there at the top. We're located on the first floor of the south building of the Indiana Government Center. We do have a window at the front, public facing, so you can come in and talk to somebody at the front desk. So if you do have any questions, please reach out. We appreciate you taking the time to watch this webinar today. I think that's a great indication that you probably do care about doing things the right way. And we wish you the best of luck as you operate your new business. Thank you. Okay.